So, welcome everyone to this new set of lessons. Today we will finish this part about visual design and navigation, and then in the second slot we will start the evaluation chapter. So we will see a brief overview of what evaluation means from an HCI perspective, and then we will focus specifically on heuristic evaluation, which will be what you will do during the assignment 3. Okay, so today, unfortunately, there will be 3 hours of theoretical lectures, and then next week on Monday we will do an exercise also on heuristic evaluation, so that you will be prepared for the assignment 3. So last time we stopped on colors, right? So maybe it's better to... Yes, I think we concluded with this example. Okay, cool. So colors, the most dangerous weapon in your tool set. First of all, in your opinion, are colors a property of an object? Is color an objective property of an object or not? Sorry? Yes, there are colorblind people, that's true. And more in general, color is not an objective property because it also depends on the context, right? So the lights, the current contextual situation in which we are observing things. So that's the first important thing. So colors depends on factors, on context, and stuff like that. What we don't want to do is something like this, right? So here is a terrible example about the usage of colors. There are a lot of informations, lots of different colors. It's basically a mess, right? So we need to be careful when selecting the colors that we are going to use in our design. And by the way, I forgot to mention this again. This is not something useful right now in your project. It will be useful for the assignment 5, so the high fidelity prototypes. So with colors we can communicate key information, we can underline, we can emphasize information in our graphical user interfaces, but at the same time an inappropriate use of colors can reduce the performance of an interactive system. So if we are using the wrong colors, probably the efficiency, the usability of the system will decrease. So to start, some very generic suggestions. Be careful, do not exaggerate. The second bullet point is very important, and it's also part of our process. Designing grayscale first. So we'll see some examples, and you in your project will first design in medium fidelity, which is still in grayscale, because it is important to ensure that information is conveyed by the text and the layout. And then we add colors as an additional feature of our interfaces. So when adding colors in your high fidelity prototypes, try to conserve the same luminance of the grayscale design. So the same information should be visible even in grayscale without colors. It's important to assign meaning to colors. For example, in our application, maybe the primary action is always the same color, then the secondary action is another color. And we don't mix this kind of colors. Then another suggestion, try to use a limited and consistent palette. We will see this concept of palette. So a restricted number of colors, not like in this example, with slight variations. So today we will also see we'll also see some tools to create palettes of colors that can be used for our interfaces. And the last bullet point, try to avoid in the same interface, try to avoid the display of pure, highly saturated colors that are at the extreme of the spectrum. For example, try not to use blue and red at the same time, and we will see in a minute why. And in general, pastel colors are better instead of flashing colors like highly saturated red and blue. So what are extreme colors? And I won't go into details, but this is the visible spectrum, so the set of colors that we can see. So there are ultraviolet on the left, infrared on the right, and it's quite clear from the spectrum which are the colors that we can see, which is the first one, V. Violet, then we have blue, gray, yellow, orange, and red. And do you know how the eyes work? How do we see? Okay, light arrives on the retina. There are some perceptors, that's true. In general, it's a very complex activity, and we are not experts on this, but just to give you some very generic insights on how the eyes work. So the eye is a mechanism for receiving light and transforming it into an electrical energy. In reality, the light reflected from objects and the image that we perceive is focused upside down, and then our brain flip this image and transform it into electrical signals for our brain. And the brain finally detects pattern and movements. There are two kinds of receptors in our eyes, cones and rods. The cones are located in the center of the retina and are responsible for color and sharp vision. And there are at least three types of cones, each sensitive to a different color. So we have cones for red, for green, and for blue light. And then there are the rods that are more sensitive to movement and are used for night vision and are concentrated in the peripheral area of the retina. So rods help us seeing in the dark, and cones helps us distinguishing different colors. And we need to avoid extreme colors, because otherwise we activate different rods, different cones, together, and that's quite expensive for our brain. So if we display blue and red in the same interface, our eyes need to activate blue cones and red cones at the same time, and this is expensive for our brain, and that's why it's better to avoid this kind of extreme colors in the same interface. Okay. Anyway, this is an example of one of the suggestions that I've shown before, designing in grayscale first. So this is taken from, again, Stack Overflow. And as you can see, even without colors, we are able to recognize what is important in the page, what are the connected entities, and so on. And if you look at the version with colors, we see that this luminescence, this distinction between the different parts of the interface is quite the same. So it's a good example of how to design in grayscale first, then adding color, trying to match the same importance of the different entities on the screen. Instead, if you do something like this, Again, Politecnico is always a good source of examples. This is the old Politov website. I don't know if you ever encountered this. But what's the problem here? Let's zoom a bit here. Okay. Yes, in a way it's using in some portion some, I don't know if it's, yes, it's red and blue, so this could be a problem. But let's look at this version in grayscale. Colors doesn't mean anything, yes. And in terms of distinguishing the different elements,
it's very slightly, instead of that narrow, colorful, under the text, it could be bigger, maybe cover the text.
Okay, this color could be bigger. And in particular, the problem is that it's really hard to distinguish between the different navigation items here in grayscale. For example, this one and this one looks really similar. It's almost impossible to distinguish the two entities. And the fact is, there are probably too many colors here, okay? No, I need to. Okay. So, how to pick colors for our interfaces? I will show you some hints, some advices. The first framework or tool that we can use is the color wheel, or also named the U circle. That says you can pick colors that are at the opposite of this wheel, and these opponent colors go well together. So we can, for example, decide that our primary color is yellow. So for the main actions we can use yellow, and then we know that the complementary color, the purple, is a good match for the yellow. So we can, for example, use purple for the secondary actions on our website. Again, blue and red are not opponent colors, so it's better not to select them together. So this is a very basic tool to select probably the main two colors for our graphical user interface. If you need more detail, you can look at the documentation from Canva, for example. But then there is the concept of palettes. What is a palette, in your opinion?
Set of colors that you want to use.
The set of colors that we consistently use in our website. So every well-designed website, for example, or application in general, has its own palette, and this set of colors is used consistently in all the pages of the application. This is, for example, the palette from the new Politecnico website. In this case, it's not a negative example, it's just the palette. So you can also explore it in more detail at this link. And it exemplifies all the colors that are used in our website. So how can we generate these palettes? There are tools online that can help us defining these palettes. This is one example, colors.co. It gives you 5 different colors that are well designed, that can stay together in the same interface. And of course, you can set some preferences, and then the website generates for you the palette. Then there is also color lovers. In this case, you can also explore palettes from other websites and reuse them in your own. So it's more like a community where designers can share their own palettes, and you can reuse them. Of course, palettes are not the final answer to our problems. So you pick a starting color, you tweak some options, and these generators generates for you the 5 perfect colors that you should use to build your website. In reality, this is not always the answer unless you want your site to look like this. So this is the palette. It has been generated from this kind of websites, and this is a website that uses the colors in the palette. It's clearly problematic, right? So to build something real, you typically need a much more comprehensive set of colors to choose from. You can start from the 5 generated through these tools, but then you also need variations of these colors, from darker colors to lighter version of the same colors, so that you can design something like this, okay? That it's definitely better than this version, right? Yes?
So we need the variation always. Like there is a palette with some colors, but there are extra variation of the same colors.
Yes, exactly. If I'm not wrong, this sort of palettes includes the 5 initial colors, and then, for example, for the blue, you have different variations of the blue, by including also lighter version of blue. This is not white, probably. It's also blue. So again, for each of the 5 colors, you define a set of variations so that you can build something real. Then other possible tools, color contrast. For color contrast, the name is colorsafe.co. This website gives you an indication of if the contrast between your colors is enough or not. So when you have a palette or a set of colors, you can put those colors in these websites to get an indication about the contrast, if it's enough or not. Okay? Any questions? Cool. So another examples, always from the Politecnico. Do you know what is this? Probably not. Yes?
The prenotazioni tool.
With this tool, you can reserve a study room, for example. It was used in COVID time. I don't know if it's still in use right now. No, more or less. I don't know. Anyway, what are the problems in terms of colors, of course? Red and blue, as usual. So this is definitely a problem. Other problems? Unfortunately, it is in Italian, but anyway. Yes?
The disponibile blue seems the same as the information below it, so maybe it's not that like.
So this color available is blue and is quite the same of this box, right? Yes, this could be another problem. In general, every time you need a legend, an explanation to explain the colors, that's a problem, right? There is something wrong, probably. And also there is this interesting difference here. So time intervals have different shades of red, for example, or blue. For example, here, 9 to 10 as this kind of red, and then 10 to 11 as this lighter version. And the problem is that they are using a time interval as the first row of the table, but actually the time interval is an interval that is valid, right? So I should be able to reserve a study room in that specific interval, so it's not clear why they used different colors. Okay. So if we want to summarize, colors needing an explanation legend, it signals a problem. Time intervals are shaded with 2 different colors. And yes, also there is no indication of the fill level. Okay. So we have seen some very generic ins and guidelines for selecting our colors. Again, if you need more information, you can use the link provided in the slides. Anyway, the advice is to try to define your palettes, then pick your main colors, try to define variations of each colors, and then use them consistently by assigning a meaning to each colors. Now let's move to reading and navigation. So, and this is an important part of visual design because the user should be able to quickly find the information they need. So what is navigation? So navigation, first of all, has nothing to do with visual elegance, graphics, and so on. It's about enabling users to know where they are currently in the interface and to steer them to their intended destination. So the goal is to make the user able to satisfy their information need and to solve the tasks. So it's about getting the work done or having fun also. So yes, we need to navigate in the platform, but this navigation should also be funny in a way and not boring. Navigation may consist of task navigation, which is related to the task in general, so successfully operating interactive applications, such as installing a mobile app or completing a survey and so on, or purchase a ticket. Then we also have web navigation, which is typically related to finding some information on a website or browsing social media. And then we also have command menu navigation, which is related to finding the action needed, typically in a desktop application. We can have different type of navigations. The most common is probably navigation by selection. So we select something on the screen, and based on our selection, the app redirects us in another page. And of course, this kind of navigation may happen on menu bars, pop-ups menus, toolbars, and so on. We can have also shortcuts, gestures for rapid interaction. So, for example, you have probably seen this in one of the golden rule of interaction design. It would be important for your application to support both novice users, so users that are not experienced with your app, and experts. So shortcuts and gestures are there for experts to speed up the navigation, the interaction with the application. And here is a list of gestures that are typically related to navigation tasks, like tapping something on the screen, long press on an icon to maybe delete it, delete an application, double tap, and so on. Again, I would say that the main element for navigating by selection are menus. Here, for example, there is a navigation menu on a website. And of course, in designing menus, you should follow conventions related to the target device that you are designing for. For example, again, a navigation menu on a website is typically in that specific position. And the trouble with menus is always how to organize items within them, especially when you have a lot of items. And we have different approaches, starting from the linear sequence. Then we can have hierarchical structure, so 3 menus. And we can also have network structures. So when choices can be reached by more than one path. And this is an example of a tree-like menu, a navigation menu that exploits this tree-like format. as you can see, there is here the first level. Then when I go to shop, there is a second level, and when I select cycle, I enter the last 3 level where there are different groups of items organized in a semantic way. And of course, organizing these elements is important. I cannot put something about running under the cycle item, otherwise it creates confusion, of course. So some rules for organizing this kind of tree-like menus. It is important to use task semantics to organize menus, to create groups of elements that are connected in a semantical way. It is important to limit the number of levels. Then you should create groups of items that are logically similar. Level 1 is country, level 2 is states, level 3 is cities, okay? And we don't mix these different levels of abstractions. It's better to form groups that cover all the possibilities. And also, more importantly, make sure that items are not overlapping, okay? So it's better to use concerts and sports than entertainment and events, right? Because an event is also an entertainment something, so they are overlapping in a way. Instead, concerts and sports are 2 different things that are not overlapping. In each group of elements, try to arrange items in natural sequence. So it's not important to use the alphabetical order, it's better to use the natural sequence, trying to group related items. And of course, keep ordering of items fixed. So when you decide something, your menu is like this, it's always like this, okay? You don't change the order of the items every time the user opens the app, okay? This is a set of very generic rule of thumb to organize this kind of menus. And again, let's do an example. This is the menu for opening the same interface we have seen before to reserve study rooms, for example. Again, it's in Italian, sorry, but how is this menu working in your opinion? What happens when I click, for example, here, study rooms? Sorry? Something open, okay. Any other ideas? Where should this pop up opening? Yes?
Maybe the arrow means that someone will pop up below it.
Something below. So the menu should expand to open a pop-up below the item that I've clicked, right? That's how this kind of menu usually works. Unfortunately, if I click on study room, the menu open, yes, a pop-up, but below the entire menu, okay? And this is something I would say counterintuitive, right? Because we are not used to see something like this. If we see this arrow, we naturally expect to have something that expands directly below the item. And what's the problem of using this kind of solution? Especially if I'm not Italian.
Shift your navigation.
Yes. It shifts your navigation. You need to jump in different portion of the screen, that's true. But there is another big problem here. Yes?
The new menu seems unrelated to...
Exactly. The new menu seems unrelated to the first one, Even the labels are different. Yes, there is Aule Studio, but if I'm not Italian, maybe I'm not able to understand this. So it's really difficult to understand how the different menus are connected, okay? Because also selections are not highlighted, so it's difficult to see this link. And then, okay, and then if you continue, of course, again, it opens a new pop-up below and opens the tool we have seen before. But there is also another problem, not strictly related to menus, but to something related to the last lecture about text. There is probably too much text here, okay? And in the text, you are also mixing different kind of information. Sometimes there is the name, sometimes there is an indication of where this study room is, and sometimes we use a specific address, and sometimes we use the nearby room to say where this other room is, okay? So it's also probably problematic in terms of text. And also the text is not consistent. There is Aule Studio here, and then Sala Studio here. So again, it's not consistent. Are the same thing? Probably yes, but again, it creates confusion. This is instead another, I would say, better example. It's a menu from some application on macOS, probably. This is a very long menu, but I would say is well organized because there are different groups of elements. I will probably use a template or a frequently used font in this case. So most of the time I will find the font I need in the upper part of the menu. Then if I need a specific font, I can look in the longer list below, okay? But it's well organized because they are putting the most frequent selections on top, and then only if you need something more specific, you can go deep in the menu below. Then there is this strategy of using the same font for writing the font. So there is this sort of preview that helps recognition. And the list, of course, is scrollable. The only, I would say, I don't know if it's a drawback, because at the end we need to make a choice, or now we are displaying things in a menu. There is this lack of a semantic ordering, especially in the list of all the fonts which are displayed alphabetically. So similar fonts can also be very distant in this list. But again, it's a choice. It's alphabetical because if you need a specific font, you probably know the name, so you can use the alphabetical order to identify it. Okay. In general, our interface should guide the user towards completing their tasks. Should guide the user. You probably remember one of the 3 ingredients of visual design that we have seen last time. So there is this concept of information sent. We as users are always looking for some information in a graphical user interface, and we use this sort of information sent. So the cues that the graphical user interface gives to us in order to be able to find the information. So not only the visual design, but also the information we put on the screen should allow the users to easily use our interface. So in a way, we need to provide user with cues to find the right information at the right moment. And when we have poor information sent on an interface, well, users don't know where to go, for example, have a low confidence, and typically use the back button too often. Okay, so for example, in the assignment tree, when someone else will try your prototype, if you discover that most of the time the testers use the back button, this is probably an indication that there is something not working in terms of information sent. So the user is not able to find the information they need. And did you ever see this version of the Polito website? Yes, someone yes, someone no, but anyway. Here there is a huge problem in terms of information sent and navigation in general, especially when you click on the different boxes. Are you able to summarize what are the problems in terms of navigation and information sent? Let's look at the layout. What's the problem with the layout of the different pages? It's completely different, right? So the layout is totally different across the different pages. So when you learn how to use a subsection, it's really difficult to reuse your knowledge in another subsection. Other problems? Too many colors, that's for sure. And related to colors, there's no semantic. So there are the same colors are associated to different things, different actions. Okay, so again, it's really difficult to reuse your knowledge that you acquired in a section in another subsection. And that's why it was really difficult to find the information you need on this version of the Politecnico website. As you know, they redesigned the website, but there are still some problems. So this is a sort of exercise for you. I give you 10 minutes to open the Politecnico website, the current version, and try to find this information. The deadline for passing all the exams for graduating the master's degree in computer engineering in the winter session, okay? Look for any problems related to navigation and information sent, and then we will discuss, okay? 10 minutes. Let's see if they are enough for this kind of information.
Obviously, without search.
You can also try to use search because it's terrible. Also, the search is terrible. So you can also try. But yes, let's try both versions. So with the search and without the search. Okay. Were you able to find this information? Yes. Okay. Let's try. Let me open the website. Where should I go? Sorry. Okay. Where should I go? Didattica. I can also maybe put it in English. So education.
Master degree program.
Okay.
Then I went to computer engineering.
Yes, let's search it.
This is like the way out.
Yes. It's the same. Then? Student guide.
Notice board.
Sorry?
Notice board.
Notice board.
I have the engineering here. The blue, no, the other
No?
one.
Sorry?
The other blue box, yes. And then graduation calendar for the big programs. And then on the bottom, the small link,
So there is a PDF where you find, no,
the last, yes.
here? Okay, and here you found the deadline. There is also another way, and that's probably a sign that something is not working properly. Which is the alternative way. Calendar. Then
Between chronological and thematic.
one of the two, probably, yes, this one. Graduation periods. And then, yes, November, December 2025. And the deadline for passing all the exams was September 20, right? So it's already late. There is also another way. That's cool.
Under master's final examination.
Master here.
Yes. There is registering for final exam.
Okay.
And then there is check the thematic calendar.
Somewhere.
That will bring
Okay, to the same calendar. Okay, so at least 3 different ways for obtaining the same information. This sound exciting, but probably is not, right? So what are the problems, in your opinion, in terms of information sent, in terms of navigation, when trying to find this kind of information? Yes?
there is a section that is called laurearsi, but there is no information about
Okay, somewhere there is a section called laurearsi or graduating, but inside that section one would expect to find that information, but it's not there. Where is this section, by the way?
under education on the front page.
Okay, so it's here. Okay, so there is no way to. Okay. Any other problems?
In a certain point, you see the format of the website change.
Is switching.
Yeah.
Yes. For example, here probably. So let's look at one of these. It's the same. Guida studenti. And here the layout is changing, probably because they still have to redesign that part. So this is probably the same design of the old version. So the same website is not updated correctly. And there are some parts of the website that are still in the previous design form. And that's definitely a problem in terms of information sent and navigation, because here there are probably different conventions with respect to the other version. Any other possible problems?
Also, this page is the same for every course.
Sorry, I didn't get your point.
Student guide page is the same for every course chosen.
Okay, so this guide is the same for all the courses, probably not in terms of calendar, because the calendar is probably different, I guess.
Sorry, not this, the notice board.
The notice board, okay.
Because you have to choose.
So this is not strictly related to the specific course, but it's generic. So again, it can create confusion because it's a button within a specific course, but then it redirects you in a very generic page. That's for sure.
Older version has a lot of problems.
Yes, the older version has a lot of problems. Some of them we have already seen in some of the examples. Yes. Maybe an additional I don't know if it's a problem, but I don't know. There are different ways of displaying navigation buttons. For example, sometimes like here, navigation is on the left, while here, the main navigation is within the page, at the bottom of the page with these different buttons. And again, this is probably due to the fact that the two versions are still different, and it can create confusion. Okay, any other things to signal? Of course, these are all examples that you should try to avoid in your projects, but hopefully the design of your user interface will be consistent. Okay, let's go back to the slides. Again, common problems, we have seen some examples when you encountered unexpected categories or menu voices. This can create confusions in terms of information sense. There can be hidden navigation. Also, icons can be used to improve information sent, and when they are too generic or not easily recognizable, this could create confusion, of course. In general, in terms of visual design, icons facilitate recognition over recall, and we will see this guideline in the next lecture, recognition over recall. Of course, this happens when they are used consistently and are frequently visible. And in general, redundant coding helps recognition and memorization. So instead of using just the icon, it's better to use the icon plus maybe a label or a tooltip or something that explains the icon if I need more information. In terms of links instead, one of the main elements related to navigation, try to use multi-words links, especially on the web. And there is an accessibility guideline that says that the link should self-describe the content behind it. So do not use, please, click here as a link, but try to use, for example, a link that, again, explain the content. And also try not to use jargon, but use straight language, like do not use scorometric download, but use download the spreadsheet for computing scores. And this is very important. Yes, and here are some slides on forms that are another kind of elements that is used for navigating. But again, I think that it's quite, you already know what are the main elements that you can put on the form, so that's fine. Okay, the last part of this set of slides is related to reading content and how people read online. We have already anticipated this question last time, I think. So what's the answer to this question? They don't, okay? They don't, and that's why we really need to reduce the amount of text within an interface, because typically users don't read online, especially on the web, and there are experiments that demonstrate this. And what people do is actually this: they look at the images, they look at the focal point without paying attention on the text. Okay, so no one read that specific text in this advertisement. And so the red area is, of course, where where people typically look on the page. And this has been measured through a particular instrument called eye tracker. Do you know what is an eye tracker? So this sort of glasses with a camera that can understand where the people is looking on an interface. And these are some examples. these glasses track the movement of your eyes. Okay. If you want some details on how these specific devices are working, here you can see some more details. But anyway, you can, through this kind of devices, you can understand, for example, how people scan a linear menu and so on. Like in these experiments. And for example, there are studies that tells us where users look on the web independently of the underlying content. Okay, so for example, here you see where people typically look in the Google search engine. Okay, so from the image you can easily understand that if you are not on the top 2 or 3 results on Google, you are typically out of the game, right? And so we really know that the portion of the page, especially on the web, that where users typically look is this one. So if you need to put some important information, especially in the web, you should really try to use that portion of the screen. Because again, people don't actually read the page, they scan the page looking for the info they are searching for. So for example, if I'm looking to buy a ticket for a concert or something else, I will probably scan the interface looking for some keywords like buying or like ticket. So we scan the page looking for this kind of keywords that are associated to our task, and the other parts of the interface, they are simply invisible to the user. And there are a lot of experiments that tells us this, and the underlying text is try to simplify the text in your prototype, and this will be also something that we will stress you also in the feedback on Wednesday. Just some advices for this kind of thing. Look at what other apps, other websites are doing in order to decide where to put the important information. The important information should be above the fold, of course. So try to prioritize the important information and try to put the information where people expect them. And also, this is interesting, try not to put important information where ads are typically displayed in a page, because unconsciously our brain has learned how to skip this kind of advertisements. So if you put something in a portion of the page where typically there is an advertisement, unconsciously our brain tends to discard this kind of information. And yes, this explains what I have just said. Okay? Any questions on this? Yes?
The center of attention, or like the most frequent
Oops.
the user see,
Yes?
it's determined by the page design, or there are some pre-ready maybe patterns. For example, user always look at the top, or it depends on your design.
Okay. I would say that there are some experiments that tell us that there is something that happens independently of your design. So for example, this is an example. On the web, this area of the screen, on the top left of the screen, is typically the part of the screen where the user typically look for, at least first. So if you need to display something important, it's better to put it there, okay? and in general towards the top of the interface, of course. And then with your design, you can also maybe change something. But again, the advice is always try to follow conventions. So let's analyze how different websites, how competitors are displaying images, because there is a reason typically why certain elements are in a certain place. For example, just to anticipate something that I guess I will repeat, and also Luigi and Tommaso will repeat during Wednesday feedback, there is this tendency, it's very common across the years. Several groups tend to design, for example, a mobile app where the home page is an empty home page with 3 different buttons, and the 3 buttons are the door for the 3 different tasks. Okay, so you have 3 different tasks. Okay, let's put 3 different buttons to satisfy the 3 tasks. That's not a good idea. Did you ever see a mobile application with 3 buttons on the home page and that's it? No, probably no. So the advice is always, let's try to look at existing mobile apps and the design conventions of that specific device, and let's try to mimic that conventions, because it's typically a good idea. Okay? Okay, if there are no questions, I think we can take a 15 minutes break, and then we will start the evaluation chapter.